I genuinely think I need to get like catheterised, especially for these recordings. My weak bladder just can't take it, man. I've reached 35 years of age. It's all gone to fucking shit.
Just have like a hose pipe into a bucket, like under.
Honestly, man, like I was sitting here thinking, I could just piss myself. Like the Lemmy sketch. Just piss yourself. Just piss yourself.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Scratchcast, the alternative music podcast. I'm Snedds, and as always, I'm joined by Gent Star Patron, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
It's actually an anagram of Grant Patterson.
Ah.
Those three words. I spent ages doing that. That's the best I could come up with.
A lot longer than you should have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is becoming a quarterly podcast because it's been fucking months.
The last time we recorded was May.
Yeah, which is fucking ages ago.
That seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, but how you been since then?
I've been good, man. Very busy. As I was saying, I'm kind of talking to you from the new dining room, the new house in Kilmarnock. So it's been all go. Good.
I was supposed to go and see Rage Against the Machine last week, so I'm fucking depressed.
What happened there?
I don't really know, but something to do with Zach De La Rocha hurting his foot. So on doctor's advice, they cancelled the entire UK tour. Yeah, so the Edinburgh gig was cancelled. They pulled out of like...
They pulled out. Is it the Leeds Reading
Was
Festival?
it Leeds? Yeah. So replaced by the 1975.
Yeah,
that would have been a depressing swap for anyone going to that festival. But yeah, so yeah, I've been looking forward to that for months, and then it was cancelled. So that was pretty shit.
Has it been rescheduled? Have you been given your money back, or
it was just refunded? So it was supposed to be them and Run the Jewels and a couple other acts. So Run the Jewels would have been good as well, and I think they did actually play a gig on the same night, but it was a separate thing. So we got refunded for Rage, and then you could have booked Run the Jewels tickets, which in hindsight I probably should have done. But anyway, missed them as well. But weirdly, that's the second time we've had a gig cancelled for when someone's hurt their foot. I was supposed to see Alkaline Trio in Edinburgh, 10 years ago or something, but Matt Skiba, right. I don't know if he broke his foot, but he hurt his foot, so they cancelled. Would have thought maybe he could have played. I mean, fucking Dave Grohl played a gig with a broken leg.
Famously, yeah. Famously.
It's like, fucking, yeah, try
Pull
harder.
yourself together.
But that gig is quite funny, because the week I was going with Ginger John and Lyle, and we were all meeting up in Aberdeen and then heading down to Edinburgh. And a week before the gig, me and Lyle both got a text from John saying, right, that's me on the train. I'll be in Aberdeen in an hour. I'll meet you at the bus station or whatever. We're like, the fuck are you doing? It's not for another week. So he was able to get off at like Huntly and then go home, but it's just like, what an idiot. But I don't know. Maybe that was what cursed it.
Maybe
that was what cursed it. But anyway,
you've been to a few other gigs, though, haven't you, since we last spoke?
Yes, yeah. I've been to a couple. We'll go over them in a minute. I'll run through what we've got on the show first.
Good man.
And then we'll go through those. So first up, we'll be running down some of the gigs been to over the past few weeks and months. Then we'll do the digital corkboard. There's a few quick album announcements that I want to go through. Then we'll be doing, on our single swap, A Heretic's Inheritance by Newark, New Jersey's underground hip-hop duo Dalek? Don't know why that was so hard to say. And the song Wrecked from power pop garage rockers Weird Nightmare. Then on Submission Corner, we've been sent the album The Hum of the Machine from sci-fi prog stoner rockers Grama Vedetta, and the Shine EP from the grungy post-hardcore band Roseneath. And then finally, our album selections this time round are Waterslide Diving Board Ladder to the Sky from art indie rockers Porridge Radio, and the album Speak No Evil from Glasgow-based multi-instrumentalist, singer and rapper Becca Starr. Okay, let's go through a couple of gigs here then. So, actually, ages ago, back in May, I went to see Viagra Boys at the QMU Union in Glasgow.
Yeah.
So, that was pretty good. It's the first time I've been to QMU. It's like a 20-minute tube ride or something from the city centre. And you were going to, what was it, Darwin Deez the same night?
Darwin Deez, yeah, we saw him at St. Luke's. So that was really good. So I think he was originally meant to be touring way back in 2020 to kind of celebrate the 10-year anniversary of his debut album, but obviously with kind of COVID and what have you, it got rescheduled. But it was really good. It was really good. He was supported by a band called Youth Sector, which, yeah, they blew me away. They were really good. I hadn't heard from them before, and it wasn't until I was doing my notes that I found out that they're a Brighton-based band. For some reason, I just assumed they were American. But yeah, they were fantastic. Like, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on them. They released their second EP, Adult Contemporary, in February of this year. So it must have been just before I saw him in Glasgow. But yeah, Darwin Deez was he was on fire. Like, it was really good. He's quite well known for him and his band doing like almost Napoleon Dynamite-esque dance sequences. So he'd play, I think he pretty much played his first album back to back, and then, played songs from his other couple of albums, and then every now and again they would just kind of stop what they're doing and like do all this kind of synchronized dance things. So yeah, it was really good. And I think, yeah, Tom bought his first album on vinyl and got signed.
Nice.
At the end of the gig. I didn't, because I didn't have enough money, but it's pretty cool nevertheless.
Well, at the Viagra Boys gig, they were selling the usual merch. I don't think they had any records, but they were selling like a Viagra Boys lighter. So it's like a lighter with the Viagra Boys logo on it, which I was going to buy because it was cheap, and I was like, I'm skint and I want some merch, but obviously they were sold out, so I didn't get anything from that gig. But the support for Viagra Boys was what's that band? Well, it was a singer-songwriter called Grace Cummings, who's from Australia. But
right, okay.
And I think the sort of music she's got on Spotify is quite acousticy and stripped back, but she actually had a sort of full band with her, so everything was electrified, and it was like sounded a lot bigger, like almost like big stadium rock kind of numbers. So she was pretty good. She's got one hell of a voice as well, so definitely worth checking out. I don't know if moving forward there'll be more of that kind of thing, more sort of electrified stuff rather than the more singer-songwriter stuff, but definitely worth checking out. But Viagra Boys themselves were, like, the sound wasn't amazing. Like,
right, okay,
it was pretty good, but the sound wasn't amazing because it's sort of a little bit cavernous, I suppose, but it didn't really matter because they were good. Like, they played heaps of stuff from Streetworms, heaps of stuff from Welfare Jazz. They played some new stuff. They opened with a song called Research Chemicals, which I've never heard before. It's from their Consistency of Energy EP, which is from way back in 2016, so like well before we'd even knew anything about
Heard
them.
of
So
yeah.
so they came out to that. So I was like, oh, I don't know this song. So I felt a little bit left out, but it was really good. And then they played a couple of new tracks. They played Just Like You from Streetworms, which was awesome. Six Shooter, which is just like grooves upon grooves upon grooves, no vocals. Slow Learner. Ain't No Thief, which is another new one, which is really good as well. Secret Canine Agent. They played Toad, which was brilliant. Obviously, they played Sports, which again was absolutely mental. And they played like a full on, like, it felt like it lasted for about 20 minutes, this really, really long version of Shrimp Shack, where it just
that would be
it just never ended. And
I love that track.
And that's like, there was an encore, and they played, I think they played Worms and Down in the Basement, but I had to leave to go and get my my tube back into town so I could get home at a reasonable time to get a bus back home. So I missed those, but yeah, I was done after 20 minutes of Shrimp Shack. I was like, that's plenty. That was
Just start
more
seeing
than
through
enough.
time and space.
Yeah, that was more than enough. And the fucking Sebastian, the front man, he comes out with shades on, topless, just covered in tattoos, and he doesn't give a fuck. He's just got a big pot belly, and he's just kind of strutting about the stage, howling and yelping. It's just, yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I was moaning about the sound a wee bit at the start there, but it really didn't matter.
The performance more than made up
yeah,
for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was fucking excellent. So, I think it's sometime in January they're back in Glasgow at the Barrowlands.
Are we not seeing them?
Yeah, that's when it is.
In January. Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember when it was.
I thought it was December, man, for some reason.
No, I'm pretty sure it's January.
We probably should find out.
Yeah, it's definitely January. I just don't know
Okay.
the exact date. It's the 20th or something. It's late January. Anyway. So they were really good. So looking forward to seeing them again. I then, just about a week later, I saw Man on Man at Broadcast in Glasgow. So it was good to go back to Broadcast because that's one of my favourite little venues in Glasgow. And I've seen Brutus there, I've seen Press Club there. The sound is always brilliant. For whatever reason, it's just this little tiny basement venue. I don't know, maybe hold about 100 people at a squeeze.
Where is that again, Snedds? Where is Broadcast?
Far end of Sauchiehall Street. It's across the road from the garage, pretty much. A little bit further down.
Right, okay. Yeah.
A little bit further down from there. So, it's a good little venue. It's got a cool bar up the stairs. And then you go down into the basement. But they had support from Jack Brotherhood, who is the frontman of the queer indie rock band of the same name. But it was just him doing some songs, some sort of emo-y kind of stuff, but in particular the song Heteronormativity, which I think at the time was his new single, but that's off the new EP Live Laugh Jack Brotherhood, which I think is quite a good title. And that was a particularly good song. So he was up first, and then Man and Man came out, and they did I'd say they did most of their album. I think they opened with 1983. And I remember I don't know if it was 1983, but either that or the second song, they basically had a big smooch on stage just before they started playing, which was funny. And kind of, if you didn't realise they were a couple until then, they made it very clear. So that was quite good. They played Stoner, which is that really sort of 6-minute opening track from the album, which was good. What struck me was they basically sounded exactly the same as they did on the record, which is really impressive. I think they had a drum track playing in the background. Yeah, and like those harmonies and things that they do on the album, just, yeah, it was brilliant. Like, really good. They did Baby You're My Everything, which is quite sort of it's basically a love song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I was surprised they did, but it actually sounded really good. They did Beach House, it's really fun as well. Two at a Time, and they did a song called Piggy, which is not from the album, and I can't find it anywhere on like Spotify or anything, but it was basically a song, something to do with like creeps that don't put their photos up on like dating profiles. And there's one line in it where they're singing, if you wanna fuck me, then we'll talk about it. And it's got this really, really cool guitar part in it, like really heavy guitar part in it as well. So that was a really good song. So I would hope that they'd release that at some point. I think they are working on a new album, but I don't know if that is they didn't say it was a new song or anything. They just played it. So yeah.
Was there much interaction between them and the crowd?
There was quite a lot of interaction. They were just kind of just the usual sort of crowd interaction. There was some sort of weird American bashing at one. No, is it American bashing? No, was it fuck the English kind of bashing at some point because it was Scotland? But I think they'd come from London or something, and then there was people in the crowd like, oh fuck them, or like you know what Glasgow's like. So
yeah.
But they dealt with that well. It was fairly good natured.
Were they just in their pants? Were they just in their tighty whities?
No, what were they
disappointing.
Wearing? They had sort of, I think they were just in like sort of white t-shirts with like boiler suits, like with the top tied around their waist. Like something like that. It wasn't. They weren't in their tighty whities. Which maybe that is a bit disappointing, but that's fairly. It's fairly over the top, I suppose.
It is. But I'm gutted I missed that, man.
They ended with Daddy, which was absolutely fucking amazing. I think some of the gigs they did, like around other towns and cities in the UK, there was an encore where they played It's So Fun to Be Gay, so it's a bit disappointing that they didn't play that, but that sentiment was there regardless of whether they played that song or not. So yeah, they were really good, and I suppose it was good to see them in such a tiny venue, but it is a little bit of a shame. They should, I feel that they're so good they should be playing somewhere a bit bigger when they come to Scotland. Maybe next time.
Yeah, you wonder though. You know what I mean? It's one of these things. You obviously want to see your bands, so you want to see the bands that you like do well and what have you, and kind of reach the audience that they deserve. But I like an intimate gig, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, like I remember going to see C6 Steve years ago, like in like a tiny tent at like Tea in the Park, or I think it was Tea in the Park. And then, like, I think I went to see him again the following year, and at that point he was playing the main stage, and it was just lost. Like, it just didn't work as well at all.
Well, I remember we went to see Flight of the Conchords at the Armadillo in Glasgow, and it was good, but they're the kind of band you want to see in a small venue, not in like a cavernous stadium almost.
Yeah, what was it? Was it the Armadillo or was it the Hydro?
I think it was the Armadillo, because I don't think it was. I'm not sure, but it was. We
were up in the gods anyway, man. Like they were like a tiny blob,
like a speck in the distance.
They were a speck, yeah. And I was basically just watching the screens. Like I could have basically been watching a movie, I suppose. But that's what happens when you go to kind of gigs like this. Did you see that Brett McKenzie's releasing an album?
I did, yeah. I've listened to
it's alright.
At least one of the songs. I haven't heard the album yet. I think it's out, but I've just listened to like the first single, and it was quite decent. At the end of that Man on Man gig, I went and bought the record on vinyl, So I've got that, and I shook Roddy's hand, and it's one of those moments I didn't really know what to say to him. I shook my hand, and I was like, you know, when you shake someone's hand and they're like, they've got a really manly, like, strong grip, and you feel a bit like, I can't match up to this. Like, I felt a little bit like that, but he was very nice. He was very nice.
What did he say to you? Can't remember. You were that starstruck.
Yeah, I was. I think he just said,
thanks.
I think I just said I really like the album, and he's like, oh, you've heard it? And I was like, yeah, I've heard it. That's about it. But it was very nice.
It's like famously, remember our mutual friend Beats, James McDonald, met Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, he was quite genuine and quite authentic. Like, he just said to him in the passing, like, oh, I like that Mr. Tambourine Man song of yours. Whereas I think I would be dumbstruck. I don't think I'd be able to vocalise anything. Like, what do you say to somebody like that?
Yeah. But it's like, I went to see Stuart Lee once, and he was like signing stuff afterwards, and I was like, I'm not even going, because I just was like, what do I even say to him? Oh, you're really funny. Like, oh, you're really funny. You're my favourite comedian or something, and then you're like, all right, see ya. I don't know.
Cheers, mate. Yeah.
I don't know what to say to him. Anyway.
Well, remember when we went to see Richard Herring? And I did get his book, one of my, I think it was his Emergency Questions book signed. And he signed it to Andrew. And I was like, my name's not Andrew. And he was like, oh well.
That's the gig where he called George Clooney a Testudinate cunt.
Aye, and likened him to a tortoise.
Yeah, it's basically, I think it was Testudinate, and the word basically means looking like a tortoise or a turtle. Yeah. And you don't really think about George Clooney looking like a turtle, but I went online and scoured the internet and found an image of George Clooney and a turtle, and then put them together, and they had the exact same expression on their face. I'll need to try and dig that up. But
yeah, because he's like that or something, like.
He's making a sort of weird side mouth kind of smile, and there's a tortoise doing the exact same. It's uncanny.
It is.
Testudinate cunt. So, anyway, on that note, let's move on to the digital corkboard then. I've hastily cobbled this together, so we'll just run through it fairly quickly. There's a new album coming from WACO. So it's called Rock Spirit Absolute Joy, and it'll be out tomorrow. So by the time this actually goes up, it'll have been out for months. But so yeah, that came out. There's been a few singles that didn't come out. There's been a few singles that came out. It's out tomorrow. The latest of those is the song Barry Gibb Was My Landlord, which is based on a true story about the guitarist James, whose landlord was actually Barry Gibb, and he stayed in the house where the Bee Gees grew up for a time. And he ended up on the Craig Charles Radio 1 Extra show telling this story. Craig Charles played the song on his show, which is quite cool. So it's a decent enough song. It's not my favourite of the singles that have come out. There's another song called Hardships Will Happen, which is an absolute banger, and it's got quite a sort of ska punk chorus to it, which is really good.
Aye, almost kind of surfy, but then it kind of takes on a different vibe towards the end, and it seemed like reminiscent of some sort of 80s training montage. There's these kind of electronic frills, like keyboard frills, and it just kind of gets you kind of pumped up. It's cool.
It is cool. So like I said, the album's out tomorrow, which will be in the past by the time this episode comes out. So just go and listen to it. Go and listen to it now. What else we got? There's a new Gogol Bordello album coming out.
I did not know that. Although I did see that they played a secret gig in Ukraine just a few days ago.
All right, okay. I didn't know that.
So I don't know if that's part of the release of the album.
The album's set to come out on the 16th of September, so reasonably soon, a couple of weeks. And the album's called Solidarity, so I suppose that is showing solidarity with the Ukrainians. So it's likely going to be quite current and outspoken. A protest album, perhaps. I mean, I'm not hugely familiar with Gogol Bordello apart from the Gypsy Punks album.
Yeah,
I think that's the only one I've heard.
I've got a few songs off that album. I saw them in was it the Leeds Reading Festival? It was down south somewhere. And I think it must have been whilst they were touring the Super Tantra album. And that's the one album I've got.
I've not.
It's brilliant. It's got what's it got on it? Wanderlust King, the song Super Tantra, and Ultimate, which I think are pretty kind of standout tracks.
What was that film? Was it called Spun? The film, it was apparently about the front man of Gogol Bordello.
There's a kind of indie flick that I quite like called Wrist Cutters, a Love Story, and a few of their songs feature on it. And Tom Waits is in it. And I can't
Tom Waits is in it?
He's in it, yeah.
He's in it, okay.
I can't remember who he plays, but there's a character in it who's very much like Eugene Hoots or Hutz, I don't know how you pronounce his surname, and he's like a struggling. I think he's playing. There's a scene in which he's basically playing a Gogol Bordello song. It's like Pogo at the Border or something like. I can't quite remember the name of the song. And like the crowd just think he sucks, so he just kills himself. He just gets like a bottle of beer and just pours it over his electric guitar and electrocutes himself. And then they all find each other in purgatory, and that's what the film's all about. It's good.
It is good. It's a weird film, yeah.
And does have a banging soundtrack.
Yeah, I don't know where I got Spun from, but anyway.
Spun is
a love story.
That's it.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to see if that album is any good when it comes out.
Yeah, man.
What else we got? We've got 3 more. There's a whole bunch of album announcements of interest of kind of bands we've talked about previously. So there's a new album coming from Press Club. This is due out in October. It's going to be called Endless Motion. There's a new single. I think there's a couple of songs from it out at the moment, the most recent of which is Eugene. And we reviewed Press Club's album Wasted Energy. I don't think it was the first episode, but one of the earliest episodes,
yeah,
maybe the second or third. It might even have been the first episode. Anyway, we reviewed that. I think we both thought it was pretty decent, so be interesting to see how they've progressed since 2019. So looking forward to that. Brutus have announced a new album. It's going to be called Unison Life. That's out at the end of October as well. Again, there are a couple of singles out. The most recent of which is Liar. And I'm just excited about being able to talk about Brutus again when that album does come out. I was a huge fan of their album Nest, which is still one of my favourite albums in the last 5 years or so. The singles that have come out aren't quite as impactful as the first single, War, from Nest. That's still one of their best songs. So it'll be interesting to see, again, what this new album is like, but I'm excited for that. And the last one I've got here is Foxjaw have got a new album coming out as well.
I did see that.
Which is due in November. And it's going to be called Not Very Nice Ice Cream, all in lower caps with no spaces. And there's a single called The Saddest Song Ever, all lowercase and no spaces. I don't know if that's going to be a theme for the songs on the album, but I imagine so. And it's more just kind of Foxjaw weirdness. It's a little bit more restrained than some of the stuff from Royal Swan. But again, it'll be interesting to see where they've gone and how they've developed since that album, which we both absolutely loved. Really, really good debut album, so looking forward to that. Right, that's everything. That was good. Went through that quickly.
Good man.
Now, let's move on to the single swap then. As always, on every episode, we give each other a song to listen to for a discussion on the next podcast. And on the last episode, I gave you A Heretic's Inheritance by Newark, New Jersey's underground hip-hop duo Dalek. And you gave me Wrecked by power pop garage punk peddlers Weird Nightmare. Do you want to kick things off with Dalek?
Absolutely, man. So as you said, you gave me Dalek, A Heretic's Inheritance. This was released on the 6th of April earlier on this year on, I'm going to mispronounce this, but I'm going to give it a go nevertheless, Epiac Records. It now features...
I think it's Epicac.
Epicac. Now features as track number 8 on their latest studio album Precipice, which itself was released on the 29th of April. That's the band's 8th studio album. Dalek, which kind of similar to what you're saying about the kind of Foxjaw songs, is all stylized in all lowercase with a wee kind of accent above the A, are an experimental hip-hop group from Newark, New Jersey, whose current lineup consists of MC Dalek on vocals and Mike Mayer on electronics, and I think they both have a part to play in the kind of production of the music. Really wasn't too sure what to expect, to be honest with you, Snedds. I think like with the single's title, I was expecting some sort of like crushing mental death metal band, but I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it's a long track, it's just under kind of 7 minutes long, and for the most part it comprises mostly of this kind of rumbling, repetitive guitar riff with kind of whirring electronics, fuzz and kind of static. The lyrics themselves don't kick in till around the kind of 4-minute 20-second mark. I'm quite surprised it was able to kind of hold my interest, but it did. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed it. Yeah, and, you know, at the kind of 4-minute 20-second mark, you know, you kind of get these kind of rap, spoken lyrics, which I think complements each other really, really well. I've written here, I'd love to be intelligent enough to decipher them. But, yeah, it was really good, man. Really good. I don't really have all that much more to say other than that. However, I did read that, I think, is it the guitarist from Tool? I think he maybe plays guitar on their new album, and I think he also had a part to play in some of their artwork, the artwork for their new album as well.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. When I first heard this, I thought Dalek were a new band, because it sounded an awful lot like Arm and Hammer, or at least with that sort of industrial kind of grinding guitar, and then some of the way the vocals were constructed with those sort of kind of offbeat melodies and things. I just thought, oh, this is a new band. It's like doing something similar to what Arm and Hammer do. But like you said, they've been on the go since the late 90s, so they've been on the go for forever.
Didn't they release like their first album like 1998 or something?
So yeah, something like that. Yeah. So they've been on the go for a long time. I think with lineup changes, but I think one of the main guys is still involved. So it's impressive that having been on the go for so long, that they can deliver something like this. It sounds so up to date.
Yeah.
And kind of at the forefront of this kind of music. And like I said, those guitars, they wouldn't sound out of place on an Arm and Hammer record, especially Paraffin, which is the record before the one we covered. Or is it two? No, it's 2 albums before the one we covered. So anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah. And there's those grinding guitars, and there's like a real sort of bounce to the bass and the drums. And it reminds me a little bit of House of Pain's Jump Around, if you slowed it down to like a snail's pace. Like, it's a very similar sort of beat, but just the tempo is far, far slower, and it has a different tone as a result, but it sounds a little bit post-apocalyptic for that reason. But even more bizarre, it sounds a little bit like the bass line from Montel Jordan's This Is How We Do It. It's just a song that goes, this is how we do it.
I think I could see that.
And then the bass line for that comes in, and they're very similar, albeit one is a sort of fun, bouncy, like soulful hip-hop song, and the other is like this dirgy, kind of almost evil sounding at points, sort of industrial hip-hop song. And it, like you say, it's really long, and there's no vocals for like 4 minutes. And yeah, I think just the quality of that bass line and that drum beat and those guitars is what keeps it interesting for 4 minutes without really changing things up too much. And then, yeah, when the vocals come in, some of them are maybe a bit more Run the Jewels than they are like Arm and Hammer. They're probably a bit more melodic and slick than some of those kind of deliberately awkward rhymes you get from Billy Woods or Lucid. But there's similarities too, like there's a line that goes, I hold myself to the highest standard, I don't give a fuck if your gods are angered. It's a great line, and it reminds me of the song Roaches Don't Fly from the Haram album. The particular line on that is, you don't have to be here if you don't wanna, which it's got just a similar kind of, just sounds quite similar. But I think, yeah, if you like the sort of darker side of modern hip hop, like Arm and Hammer, Clipping, Run the Jewels, then you should get a lot out of this. But I think that fans of more straight ahead stuff, and more classic stuff, are likely to feel less alienated by something than like this than maybe some of the more kind of art rap sort of stuff that's going about as well. So I think this is really good. It's quite, it's experimental, but it doesn't compromise on melody and catchiness, and keeps some of those kind of classic hip hop roots, but manages to still sound quite fresh and new. So yeah, like I said before, it's impressive that a group that have been around for so long can come out with something that sounds as good as this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you give this a score?
I did. I give it a 7 out of 10.
I've given it a 9. I think it's fucking ace. Good. Okay, so that was A Heretic's Inheritance by Dalek.
By concepts of patience and leverage, privilege is hemorrhage and relabeled heritage. A heretic's inheritance, so complex to identify as American. I hold myself to a higher standard. I don't give a fuck if your gods are angry. Tick-tock, motherfucker. I hold myself to a higher standard. I don't give a fuck if your gods are angry.
Right, so you gave me the song Wrecked by Weird Nightmare. This came out on the 26th of April, and it's one of a number of singles from the eponymous debut, which dropped on the 20th of May on Sub Pop Records. If I'm not mistaken, those other singles were Searching for You, which is the album opener, and Lusitania. So Weird Nightmare is a side project from Alex Edkins, who's the guitarist and singer of the Canadian punk band Mets. They're a sort of noisy, wiry, hardcore outfit, I suppose. And I'm not hugely familiar with them, but I've heard a couple of their more recent songs. Acid and Slow Decay, which came out last year, they're both pretty good. I'd compare them favourably to something like Bristol band St. Pierre Snake Invasion. They had a really good album out a couple of years ago called Caprice Enchante. It's just kind of really noisy, angry music, so that's worth checking out. Wrecked, the song, also features Alicia Bognano from the band Bully. And I think you mentioned Bully was featured on the track last time, and I kind of blanked. I was like, I don't really remember, but actually a couple of years ago I got quite into their album Sugar Egg. There was a few singles on that, particularly Every Tradition and Where to Start, that I got really into. It's quite sort of grungy indie punk rock, I suppose. They're also on Sub Pop, which I suppose is how the collaboration came about. The song itself I would describe as a low-key banger. There's a real drive to those guitars. Even in the intro, there's like, the guitar sounds really far away, almost a bit like a demo. But then it sort of kicks in and the smash of the drums hit and there's this wave of fuzzy guitar noise. And then when the vocals come in, there's this really great kind of back and forth between the two singers. They each take their time to deliver a line before joining in for these really great harmonies. Quite gritty and gravelly, with just the right amount of static on them, and some of those melodies are good as well. Particularly the I'd never be there without you, which is the chorus, I think. And that chorus has got this really kind of earworm guitar line that gets right into your skin as well. And I've described them here as being a sort of super lo-fi stereophonic song. I don't know how accurate that is, but definitely when I was listening to some of the other tracks on the album, there were strong shades of like stereophonics in some of the vocals as well. So I don't know if they really sound like stereophonics, but that was just what came to mind for some reason. And then there's like those kind of male-female vocal dynamics and sort of poppy melodies. You could compare that a little bit to something like Drug Couple that we covered the last time, but with more of a like 90s radio rock spin than like a 70s rock spin that Drug Couple did. And the song Martin by a band, Car Seat Headrest, comes to mind as well, that sort of power pop, which was kind of a song of two halves for me, but you know, it's got that kind of drive to it, really good melodic moments as well. So that was kind of where the comparison came in for me. So yeah, I think this is a really good song.
I absolutely loved it, man. Like I mean, it's a fairly lengthy track actually. Like I think it's maybe, is it just under 4 minutes long?
I've not written it down.
It's something like that. But it just like it's just full of so much energy, and you just feel as if you get this kind of blast of feel good vibes. Like I remember kind of reading about the track, and you know, it's about him missing his wife whilst on tour, missing somebody, but specifically his wife whilst on tour. And you think, kind of given the kind of subject matter, it'd be a bit kind of like, you know, a bit down, a bit depressing, but like, no, you can't help but feel good when you listen to this track. I read somewhere else that described as like just getting a blast of sugary, sweet, distorted pop punk, which I thought was kind of a good way of describing it as well. But I absolutely loved it, and I've delved into a few of the tracks from the album as well, and yeah, really enjoy it. For me, it kind of felt as if I had it did remind me a bit of Kestrels.
Yeah, okay.
Wee bit of kind of Dinosaur Jr. as well. I didn't necessarily get the kind of stereophonics vibes, but then, you know, maybe if I was to kind of sit with the album a bit longer, I might hear it.
That was just with some of the vocals on the rest of the album. Similarly, I got some like weird like Oasis vibes as well, and it's like doesn't sound anything like Oasis. Like if you listen to an Oasis song or a stereophonic song next to this, it doesn't sound anything like that, but there was just
it's just like inflections on his voice that can remind you of that, maybe. I
think so, yeah, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I've scored this really high as well. I've gone from another 9 out of 10 for this.
I give it a 9 as well, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so that was Wrecked by Weird Nightmare featuring Bully. Okay, well, what have you got for me for next time then?
I have got Sorry with Let the Lights On, which was introduced to me by my good lady Kerry. This is her first contribution to the podcast. Okay. So this was released fairly recently. So it was released on the 12th of July on the Domino record label. It's really short, 3 minutes and 3 seconds long. It's the band's first single to be released from the band's sophomore album, Anywhere But Here, which is due out next month. I think it's due out on the 7th of October. The band themselves are an English indie rock band based in North London. Their sound has been described as to hear a safari of different sound, as eye-catching as the next. It's been described as, a kind of blend between kind of a bit of punk, grunge, or at least you might hear kind of a bit of punk and grunge in 1 minute, and then a bit of kind of jazz and hip-hop the next. I don't think that's necessarily representative of this song, but I think it's a banger nevertheless, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, so what was that again?
Sorry, Let the Lights On.
Nice.
So the band is called Sorry, and the song is Let the Lights On.
Okay, cool. I am giving you hardly any information on this song that I'm going to give you, but it is called Didn't Care by the North Carolina folktronica duo Sylvan Esso. So all I'm going to tell you is that this was the final single released from their latest album, No Real Sandy, which came out on the 12th of August 2022.
I like the word folk electronica.
Like folktronica.
Folktronica.
Yeah, which is like, if you think of a band like Tongue, that's how they often gets described. So that gives you a little hint of what to expect.
Ah. Good things then, man. I loved Tongue's last album, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be good.
Yeah. Dead Club.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That's a fantastic album.
Yeah. Brilliant album. Okay, so that was Didn't Care by Sylvan Esso. Right, let's move into the submission corner then. As usual, we discuss and review some of the albums, EPs and singles that bands, artists and indie labels have sent us directly. If you're listening and have something you'd like us to hear, then you can send it over to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or direct message us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. So, first one we've got for you is The Hum of the Machine by Grama Vendetta, and this was released on the 27th of May on Mandrone Records. It's 9 tracks and roughly 48 minutes long. So I think this is the second full album from Grama Vendetta, who are London based. They're a sort of doomy prog rock kind of classic metal inspired band. And, it's been out for a while, and Dan from the band sent us over the album quite a while ago. He also sent us something from a band called Desert Clouds, which I think he's involved in, something that I've not got round to diving into yet. Dan is also the guitarist for the band Alice is Sleeping, who are a band that they have... they've got a really good song called Over and Over Again, which has been on been their alternative music playlists. They've got a really good singer, and I think it was Iketan that recommended us to Dan to send us this over to us.
Yeah, I seem to remember Iketan talking about them quite a lot as well, like in the interview that we did with them.
Yeah. And I was actually aware of Grama Vendetta before Dan sent this over, and I don't know whether that was Iketan shared it or whether it just came up on my feed for whatever reason. But basically Mandrone Records were releasing, I don't know if it's their first release, but they were releasing like a special edition cassette of Grama Vendetta's, I suppose it's an EP, Acid Compliant. It's an 8-track EP, 4 tracks of kind of doomy prog rock, and then another 4 tracks were like 8-bit renditions of those same songs. And as soon as I saw the artwork and the packaging for this, I bought it immediately. So I've got it here, and it's basically designed to look like an old Mega Drive game.
Fantastic.
So you can see, like, the artwork's retro, like, you've got this kind of skyline in the background, which is very Streets of Rage. It's very sci-fi. You've got the Mandron Records logo, which looks like the Sega
Done like
logo.
the Sega.
Yeah. And then on the back, you can see you've got the 8-bit. You've got the two sides with the 8-bit ones. And you've got these, like, random game screenshots for some sort of, like, strategy RPG or something. I don't really know what that is. I don't know if you can see that, but and then you've got the tape inside. So this is a really, really cool, like I said, as soon as I saw them...
That's a cool bit of merch, man. That's really cool.
As soon as I saw them selling that, I was like, I've got to have me a bit of that. So yeah. So that's how I kind of first came aware of Grama Vedetta. And, you know, that's quite a decent EP. There's, you know, there's like chugging riffs, stomping drums, there's a bit of Black Sabbath, Alice in Chains, some Led Zeppelin even, maybe a bit of Hendrix and the likes of Cream in there as well. Probably my favourite song on that EP is called Everything Is Terrible and The House Is on Fire, and it's just under 2 minutes long, and it just does this really like down and dirty riff. There's some sort of voice samples and things in there, but it's got this ending that just sounds like kind of Ozzy Osbourne crossed with Lane Staley. It's really cool. The EP is a little bit rough around the edges, I would say, but I think on this album, The Hum of the Machine, that production has definitely improved, and this record sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't speak for the EP, but yeah, I thought this was a great album. You know, I would say that, you know, I immediately fell in love with this album. You've mentioned the likes of Sabbath there already, and yeah, it immediately put me in mind of Black Sabbath. You know, from the word go, down to the kind of gloomy, kind of doom, kind of gloomy guitar riffs, and the guy's vocals as well. Like, they're undeniably kind of Ozzy Osbourne-esque. But yeah, I heard a lot of other influences in there as well. You know, I can't remember what song it was, but there's a guitar solo, I think it's maybe in Robots of War, which is a kind of banging song. The guitar solo at first kind of reminded me a bit like some Motley Crue, so like it was kind of a Mick Mars-esque type kind of guitar solo, and then it kind of changed. Like, there was a kind of tonal change, and then like it reminded me of like something Queen might have done.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
It kind of took on more of this kind of swooning Brian May-esque kind of feel to it that I really enjoyed. There was kind of wax of Black Mountain in there as well, particularly I think it was their third album, 2010 album, Wilderness Heart. Obviously both bands are pretty proggy, so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Robots for War there. Like, that opens like a straight up Monster Magnet song. Like, it could come straight off a Power Trip. Like, it's a really cool song, and there's a real sort of swagger to it. And there's a real swagger to a lot of the riffs on this. And it's got these cool little bass solos that kind of punctuate between the guitars and the vocals. The vocals at the end of the chorus that go, "They are all robots for war, we are all robots for war," is great. I'm not doing it justice, obviously, but and like you say, there's those guitar solos that sort of mix like elements of Led Zeppelin and Queen and Hendrix. You know, it's really cool. There's even a bit of kind of brass fanfare towards the end of that song as well, just thrown into the mix, which is pretty cool. Like you say, the vocals in general are very, very Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, Future of the Past is probably the most Ozzy song. That opening line, "I want to live in the future of the past with flying cars, with flying cars." You could imagine Ozzy singing that. Like, it's brilliant.
To be fair, there's, I mean, I found myself singing along to that a lot. Starlight Portal Show, and singing that like from the word go. Just trying to emulate the kind of lead singer. Yeah, Futures of the Past.
It's a bit on that Starlight Portal Show song where somebody's kid starts singing the title.
I thought that was a
song
stroke of genius, man.
Yeah.
Because then you hear the kind of it's the wee kid, and then there's like a really good breakdown after that I really enjoyed. And we all want to live in the future of the past. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, where are our flying cars? I've kind of written down here, like, I thought it was kind of worth mentioning, that I saw a meme not all that long ago online that said that George Jetson from the Jetsons was born sometime in 2022.
Yeah,
so it's coming, man. It's coming.
Yeah,
we'll see flying cars in our lifetime.
The thing about flying cars, there's this, on the 10th anniversary version of Clerks, there's like I don't know if it's a deleted scene from the film or whether it's just like a little promo thing that they filmed, but it's basically Dante and Randall sitting in their car, chatting about like where are the flying cars that we were promised. It's really, really good. And I think it's probably on YouTube, but that's where I first saw it, on like the extras, the DVD extras, which are a thing of the past themselves. But yeah, that was really good. What else? There's loads of interesting things on here. Like the opening track, A Chance to Win the Orb, has got some like almost like Eddie Vedder style like wails, like the echo through between these like angular, gnarly guitar licks, and there's a bit of psychedelia towards the end. There's like a weird voice sample. I don't know if it's a sample or just like the singer whispering, but it's something like, I remember the place, it was a long time ago. I remember the sound, the smell, I'll never forget it. It's very sort of eerie, and sort of profound sounding as well. But yeah, just loads of cool riffs. The Broken Time Machine is like sort of an Alice in Chains kind of style ballad, as well.
It's funny though, like I felt like a Broken Time Machine, it felt like a soundtrack to me, like it was really atmospheric, like, you know, a lot of the tracks on this album are really atmospheric, but it actually put me in the mind of Jeff Wayne's famous War of the Worlds album.
Oh, alright, okay.
I don't know which song in particular, but it gave me those types of feels, man, and I enjoyed it. But it's, you know, like you said, I mean, there's so many different influences in there, because Transmissions On, which is a kind of largely atmospheric, proggy instrumental number. I think there is like some kind of voice samples and stuff like that in there. But I mean, that for me sounded like a Roger Waters Pink Floyd number.
Yeah, that one, yeah, there's not many lyrics to that, but the lyrics that are there, or the vocals that are there, it's like a robotic, like, chant almost. And there's a couple of interesting lines from that. There's one, I'm going for a run, watered by rum. They don't want me in their club, I don't belong. And what's the other one? It's like there's like a sort of chorus section that comes in. It's like, hello, how life has changed so dramatically. Positive words, God, that bores me. I'm dead and gone, still I feel alive. This is so wrong, but I think it's right. Why do you pray for the Lord? I just love that bit. And then there's another bit that goes, after that chorus, it goes, boom, 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 peekaboo, I see you.
Yeah.
Say hi to your mum, we had some fun.
I think there's I think it's that bit maybe that reminds me a kind of Pink Floyd, like, you know, like the likes of The Wall, like that type of era of Pink Floyd. And Roger Waters, he's kind of mostly responsible for putting together The Wall, and he's a bit of a weird bastard.
Yeah, there's lots of like psychedelic sections on this, definitely. There's even bits. There's the odd bit that sounds like, try to find what track it was. It's the Electric Game, and there's like a bit of bass. There's a bass line on there that sounds like Beastie Boys' Sabotage. It's got that kind of, that same sort of jangly bass line. And there's a bit of thrash on there as well. It reminded me a wee bit of early Metallica. So, I mean, there's even the end of that song, reminded me of Guns N' Roses' cover of Live and Let Die. It's got a really familiar sort of solo, and I don't know if it's the vocal melody or what, but it just popped into my head. So Yeah, really, really interesting album, this. Did you listen to any of the 8-bit versions? Because there's an entire 8-bit album of this.
I was actually just listening to that, like, when I was having my tea, or having my tea made for me. And yeah, it was great, man. I really enjoyed it. I found myself, it was the Electric Game, actually. I think it was, because I didn't get a chance to listen to all of it. And I was like, singing along to Electric Game, like the 8-bit version of Electric Game.
There's a really good cover of Weezer's The World Has Turned and Left Me Here by a guy called Bit Shifter, which is really good. Like, it's one of the best 8-bit covers I've heard. But yeah, the 8-bit versions of these are pretty good. There's another band I wanted to mention, just because it's that kind of stomp and swagger that reminded me of them. They're a band called The One and Only People Mover. I don't know if you've heard of them.
They're the Sasquatch guys. Sasquatch.
Yeah, so they're basically, is it a three-piece? I think they're a three-piece, and they all dress up as Sasquatches. And their on-stage shtick is that they've escaped the zoo, and their zookeeper is like chasing them about or something. But they've got the same kind of like stomp and like pomp, I guess, or a similar sort of thing that like Monster Magnet have, and that I think Grama Vedetta have as well. I've kind of lost track of them over the years, but they had a really good EP out in 2015, which was just called People Mover, and that's PPLMVR. I don't know if that's because they're apes and they're supposed to be like sort of illiterate. I don't know what that is, but they're quite an interesting band. But anyway, so what score have you given this?
To be honest, man, I've said a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm on as well. It's I think just like, we haven't really mentioned it, but this sort of overall, I mentioned a wee bit at the start, the overall production of this, like all the instruments sound really clear, and like all the little percussive sounds and things that come through, the like distortion on the guitars is really cool. The vocals are integrated really well into the songs. The sound of this album is wonderful.
I would agree, man. Like in my notes, I've written like brilliantly polished and produced.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so that was The Hum of the Machine by Grama Vedetta.
I genuinely think I need to get like catheterized, especially for these recordings. My weak bladder just can't take it, man. I've reached 35 years of age. It's all gone to fucking shit.
Just have like a hose pipe into a bucket, like under.
Honestly, man, like I was sitting here thinking, I could just piss myself. Like the Lemmy sketch, just piss yourself. Just piss yourself. Or just hoof this and then just like stick this underneath the table.
I think sometimes needing to piss gives you an edge.
It does, man.
An edge.
I've yet to find that edge.
I once came second in a pool tournament in a pub, and like by the last match I needed the toilet so bad, but I'm pretty sure it was that gave me the edge that got me to the the final. And like I'm not a great pool player or anything, but it was just that gave me the edge that I needed.
I mean, all the snooker players, all the famous snooker players say that you should, like, you know, drink
Piss yourself.
pints. Well, we'll get to the point where you feel as if you're going to piss yourself. That's
It gives you a sort of an added intensity. Yeah, definitely. Right, let's get back to the task in hand.
okay.
Try not to piss ourselves. Okay, so
Small sips.
small sips. So this, the other thing we got sent was the Shine EP from Richmond, Virginia's Roseneath. Now, we were sent this by Jason from Breaths. You might remember that we covered Jason's one-man extreme metal project, Breaths, and the album Lined in Silver, which sort of mixed black metal with shoegaze, a bit grunge, and a bit post-hardcore. And since we reviewed that album, he's released another album, another Breaths album, an instrumental version of that album, a split 2-track EP with Swedish post-metal outfit Dimwind, a weird instrumental mood piece, which is also under the name of Breaths, but with a totally different vibe, and then this, I suppose, which is described as sort of grunge / shoegaze / post-hardcore. And I mean, what does that sound like? Well, it pretty much sounds like Breaths, but with this sort of extreme metal stuff taken out. Which is...
it's not a bad thing.
It's definitely not a bad thing, because those sort of grunge and post-hardcore elements were things that I definitely picked out from Lined in Silver as you know, big plus points, certainly. On this one, Jason's brought his friend Brian in for some guitars and bass, so it is technically a band this time, and I imagine playing this live there would be some more members added as well. But you can see Jason's touches all over this album. He's sort of mixing bands like Silverchair, Nirvana, maybe Smashing Pumpkins, with the likes of sort of Quicksand and Super Heaven. There's definitely Deftones in there, and maybe a bit of Thursday, and even some rival schools, I would say. So there's a lot of kind of sort of 90s and maybe early noughties kind of sounds on here. What do you think of this EP then?
Yeah, I liked it, man. You know, upon the first listen, it really did kind of hit a nerve for me. As you said, you know, and I think they described themselves online as kind of taking influence from 90s, early noughties, alternative classics, post-hardcore, shoegaze bands, and tried to create something new yet nostalgic. And absolutely, you know, I mean, you can see all those bands that you've kind of mentioned there. The first track, Blurred and Bent, you know, I love that kind of initial grunt of that kind of fuzzed up guitar coupled with this kind of ethereal, spangly, almost kind of like Sonic Youth-esque spectral guitar frills. I think like the second track, By a Thread, you know, the band kind of kick things up a gear with that track. The guitars certainly appear to have a bit more urgency about them. The song really kind of hits a groove around the kind of 2 minute kind of 50 mark. There's a really kind of big moment in the song with this kind of repetition of the song's title, By a Thread, which I found to be a kind of real earthworm, real earworm, sorry.
Earthworm Jim.
Earthworm Jim, and you know, as I've written in my notes here, it's kind of guaranteed to be one that you'll be singing along to, as I absolutely did. And you know, I think you're right. You know what I mean, when you're kind of talking about kind of Breaths and kind of this album sounding like Breaths, but with, you know, all the kind of metal and more kind of hardcore stuff kind of taken out of it. Because certainly when we were listening to Breaths, it was kind of Jason's vocals that kind of really stood out for me, and obviously there's a lot more of that in here, and something that I really kind of dug. I think the third track, Say Never, I've described that as kind of perfectly executed post-hardcore number, but which opens with this almost anthemic kind of vocals and lyrics. They do a good job of creating that quite loud dynamic with kind of soaring melodies. Again, another song that, you know, you can't help but kind of sing along to, or kind of bob your head along to. I got pure Deftones vibe and Chasing Ghosts as well. But yeah, it's a really good album, man. I suppose my only criticism, there's some really hooky moments, as on a thread by a thread that I just kind of mentioned, and I think I would like a bit more of those types of moments, I suppose. But in a 5-track EP, you're obviously going to be a bit limited.
Yeah, I think that would be my criticism as well, is that because the vocals are sort of quite ethereal, quite shoegazy, they don't change up all that much. So it maybe gets a little bit samey, but to be fair, I quite like that style, but I would maybe like a little bit more variety. But in general, I really like this. There's big grunge riffs, that the opening track, Blurred and Bent, like you said, has those big heavy riffs, and there's like a sort of open guitar that sounds quite Nirvana-esque. You've got some of the kind of lyrics, like on By a Thread, you've got a section that says, "Now you know you're not in control and you never were. Now you know how it feels to be barely high on." Just really quite emo and angsty. And I think this EP channels that kind of feeling quite well. And the next track, Say Never, is kind of a perfect example of what I mean by that. To me, that sounds pretty much like a Newfound Glory-esque pop-punk song slowed down to an absolute crawl. And I did a little experiment with this because I was convinced...
Did you?
I was convinced that if you sped it up, it would sound like a pop-punk song. So I went onto YouTube and played it at double speed, and it makes it a little bit distorted, but it's absolutely like a pop-punk song. So what I was going to do is get you to go and do that right now, but I don't know if you're going to be able to actually hear it through your headphones, given that we had issues earlier.
Given the problem, I'll try.
But
I'll try.
You know how to change the speed settings on YouTube?
I'm not sure, actually.
You can click the little... There's like a little gear icon near like the bottom of the video, and you can change the playback speed and just put it to double speed and then try and listen to it. And I'm pretty sure I'm not talking shite. But yeah, I think you speed that up and it sounds like very much like a pop punk song.
Gutting, man. It's not going to let me do it whilst I'm recording. Gutting. Oh well, I'll do it.
Try it at some point and let me know what you think. But I'm convinced that it sounds like a proper pop punk song, just in slow motion. This is a really good EP. If you grew up sort of around the same time as we did, you'll probably have kind of fond memories of like some of the heavy music from the 90s and the noughties, then you should get a lot out of this. And if you liked Lined in Silver, you'll probably like this as well.
Yeah.
Just with, if you didn't like the screaming on Lined in Silver, then you might actually prefer this. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. What did you score this?
To be fair, mate, I've given it a 7.
Yeah, I'd say a 7 or an 8.
Yeah,
but it's pretty good, and I mean it's only a 5-track EP.
I think that's it, man. Like I think, yeah, as a wee kind of sample of what's to come. Like yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what they do with a kind of full album.
Yeah. I would quite like Jason to record a pop punk album. I think that would be awesome. So Jason, if you're listening, record a pop. I want hear my call. Cool. Okay, so that was.
Did you expect an answer there? Like you were just kind of like looking up.
So waiting for the pop punk gods to grant my. Waiting for the pop punk gods to grant my wishes. Okay, so that was the Shine EP from Roseneath. Okay, let's go on to the main album reviews now then. I think we'll just start with Porridge Radio then.
Yeah, boy. Do you want me to introduce it?
Take it away.
Take it away, Jack. So this was released, again, quite some time ago. It's released on the 20th of May on Secretly Canadian Records, an American independent record label based in Bloomington, Indiana, who also represent the likes of the War on Drugs and Yoko Ono. The album is just under kind of 45 minutes long. It reached number 39 in the UK charts, so pretty decent.
It's alright.
The band themselves are a Brighton-based indie quintet formed by lead singer, songwriter and guitarist Dana Margolin, Georgie Scott on keyboards, Maddie Ryle on bass, and Sam Yardley on drums. The Guardian previously hailed them amongst their kind of top 40 new artists in 2018. We were quite late to the party on this one, I think. I was first introduced to them by way of their single 7 Seconds, which is so fucking good. That was released in kind of late 2020, I believe. It then prompted me to go back and listen to their back catalogue, and we consequently included their second studio album, Every Bad, and our favourite albums of 2021. Waterslide Diving Board Ladder to the Sky is the band's third studio album to date. They've previously been likened to the likes of alt and indie legends such as the Pixies, Sonic Youth. However, in an interview with The NME on the 9th of May 2022, so just ahead of the release of the album itself, Margolin identified that the band made a list of 20 to 30 other artists that they mentioned whilst in the studio, and consequently added them to the liner notes of the new record. And although the list boasts a wide variety of different genres and ideas, Margolin identified that Sam Yardley, who is a drummer, drew inspiration from likes of Deftones on some of his drumming. But they also mentioned likes of Coldplay and also some pop influences as well, and I think you do. I mean, I'm not familiar with the person that she kind of mentions, or the artist that she mentions in the interview. She mentions an artist by the name of Charlie XCX. But I do think there is a kind of a poppy element to some of their tracks. Their sound's previously been described as kind of like a slacker indie. And I think you can definitely hear that same indie kind of DIY aesthetic that you get from their kind of previous two albums. But for me, I think this album feels a bit more expansive and innovative. You still get that raw and emotive moments. There's some neat little kind of poppy math rock riffs in there. As I said, the poppy influences as well. But there's some really kind of tender and introspective tracks as well, so there's a bit of kind of everything in this, and it's something that I really enjoyed. The first track's technically the second track on the album. First track's just a bit of a throwaway kind of instrumental number. I don't think it lasts kind of any time at all, but the second track, Back to the Radio, that was the track that kind of blew me away. I think it's, as I said, it's really raw, emotive. For me, it perfectly encapsulates that kind of tension, frustration of a kind of warring couple or a failing relationship. The gang vocals in particular really hit me. I think that's something that's perfectly executed throughout the course of the whole album. There's numerous moments where we get kind of these kind of gang vocals, and it really kind of like helps drive each of the songs kind of anguish and pathos home. I've been talking about it for quite a while now, man. So what's your thoughts?
That's fine. Like that
fine.
song. That's fine. Just keep talking.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's I was also introduced on that song 7 Seconds. I think you recommended it to me, and I just found it to be kind of like this wonderful slice of nostalgic pop. So it's indie kind of pop. But I never checked out Every Bad in full. I just kind of gave it a cursory listen, so I'll need to go back to that, because if anything like this, then I'm bound to be on board with it. You talked about Back to the Radio there, and some of the vocals, and I like the way that the vocals kind of warble a little bit, and they sort of crack and creak and break more and more as the song goes on, as the sort of emotion kind of ramps up, which is there's a nice build to that song, and the sort of instrumentation and the catchy melodies on there reminded me a lot of Mega Bear by Me Rex.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Never thought
In
that.
that there's just this kind of songwriting knack for a melody. So that was really impressive. The next track, Trying, felt a bit more kind of light and fluffy in the sort of
Almost jaunty.
presentation. Yeah, but then the sort of lyrics are sort of about self-doubt and that kind of not being good enough, that kind of thing. But it's just the way all the instruments layer up. The acoustic guitars, there's these electric guitar licks, there's flourishes of organ, there's a sort of folky, almost folky storytelling vibe to the vocals and the lyrics of that song. And I got, from the way the kind of organs and the guitars played together, I got a little bit of the choral, maybe just a little less jaunty than the choral, but that there was something in there that reminded me of the choral anyway. I liked a lot of the lyrics and the vocals on this, and like I said, the way the vocals kind of break and crack and become more abrasive in different parts of the song. I think that's really cool. There's some good lines on, like, the birthday party, I don't want to be loved, is repeated over and over again on top of this kind of crashing drum beat. It's sort of more speak singing, I suppose. I think my favourite song is probably Rotten, or at least it's got my favourite opening. It's got this really sweet kind of guitar and bass melodies that open it up in the line, "This year the taste of apples changed and I did a bad thing." I think it's just it's just the perfect opening to a song. I think there was maybe the odd similarity to some of the stuff in, like, Girl in Red's Chapter 2 EP, I think mostly in that vocal delivery. And the end of that song has got the line, "It stops the rot from spreading," which is repeated, and it's just really, really catchy. Like, there's tons of catchy stuff.
The kind of gang vocals on and Rotten, where they're singing "It hurts," is really effective as well. It was something that I've kind of noted.
Yeah, I think in terms of...
It's almost like there's a catharsis that you get, I think, from listening to this album.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I got kind of... On some of the tracks, I got a little bit of kind of Pillow Queens vibes as well. Like,
it's funny you say that, man. But, like, Flowers in particular, I almost couldn't decide whether it reminded me of Pillow Queens or The Big Moon. I think there's definite similarities.
Yeah, I think the Pillow Queens, I think probably Flowers, and maybe You Can Be Happy If You Want To. Probably other tracks as well. And there was I'm trying to remember which song it was. I think it was The Rip, which is like the second last track, reminded me more of, like, The Big Moon, which is pretty cool. There's almost a sort of danciness to that track.
Yeah, that's probably my favourite track, man. So that's the kind of, as you said, the kind of penultimate track on the album, and I think that's where I kind of got the kind of poppy kind of vibes, which, you know, as you were saying earlier on, perfectly executed on their single 7 Seconds, and we see a return of that on this track. Yeah, I thought it was an absolute banger. That's the one track that I go back to time and time again to listen to. That, and probably Back to the Radio. The bridge at around the kind of 1 minute 14 second mark on The Rip has this kind of really fuzzy driving groove to it that I just love.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool track. There's a lot of stuff that stands out to me, but probably Back to the Radio. I think End of Last Year is really good, and Rotten, and like you say, The Rip's really cool. I think the last track, which is the title track, Water Slide, Diving Board, Ladder to the Sky, I found that to be a fairly straight ahead acoustic number to begin with. It's got the odd kind of ethereal synths in there. It's like a little bit of a spooky backdrop bit. The more I listened to it, the more kind of I got sucked into it, and it feels almost like a funeral march, the way that the sort of acoustic chords are constructed. And I don't know if that's like an actual bereavement or the death of a relationship or what it is. And I think there's a line about being on the phone to her brother in tears,
Crying Hard or something. Crying Hard on a phone call to my brother.
Yeah, trying to hold it together or something like that. And so that could be a bereavement, but then there's stuff that suggests maybe a relationship. So, I don't know, but what I thought was just kind of like this kind of, it's just a straight ahead kind of acoustic number, turned out to be a really quite engaging, the more that I listened to it. So, I quite enjoyed that as an ending to this album as well.
What did you give it, man?
So I've given this a strong 8.
I've given it a 9. A 9 out of 10 for me.
I think I feel like I maybe have to be in the mood to listen to the whole of this. Like, there were the odd standout tracks that I could probably listen to over and over again, but if I sit down and listen to this, I think it'd need to be, because it's quite down tempo and a little bit down in the dumps as well. Although, like you said, it is kind of cathartic and at times it's really uplifting as well. So
yeah, no, I get that, man. I get that. It's I really enjoy it. They were playing St. Luke's not all that long ago as well. Really? And again, it was a case of I couldn't go because I had something on or whatever. But yeah, I'd love to see them. Love to see them live. I wonder if there is some imagery in the album's title, Waterslide Diving Board Ladder to the Sky, because I remember reading in one of the interviews that they've done, I think it was with the lead singer Dana Margolin. I think she's done all the artwork for the albums and for the band so far, and I think with regards to this, she got kind of like enthralled or enticed by this kind of one painting that she saw, and I think she's kind of recreated it not recreated it, but to put her own own slant or whatever on it for the sake of this. And yeah, I think there's meant to be a connection there, but I'm not intelligent enough to decipher it.
I was trying to decipher that on the last song as well, because that is repeated throughout the song, Waterslide Diving Board Ladder to the Sky, and then there's stuff about going down to hell and then rising up to heaven, and I just couldn't quite decipher it, but that's what it was. It kind of drew me in to try and figure it out. But I couldn't quite
it's like, I wonder if it's like, it kind of reminded me a bit of like the Escher Impossible Stairs and stuff. I don't know.
I think St. Luke's would have been quite a fitting venue to listen to this, because there's a lot of like organ on here, which would be quite cool in a sort of, because it's it's an old church, so that would be pretty cool. It was, I think at one point I'd written somewhere that there was I have written it down, ecclesiastical organs, so I've kind of gone for a sort of church reference. So I think that would be quite a cool venue to see them in.
Yeah, man,
for sure.
If they tour again, we'll go.
Yeah, man, I think we should. I definitely should. I mean, if they play 7 Seconds, that would be fucking unreal. Such a great song.
That is fucking
nice. Okay, so that was Waterslide Diving Board Ladder to the Sky by Porridge Radio.
Lock all the windows and march up the stairs. But what if I never get it right? I don't wanna be loved, I don't wanna be loved. I do everything for you, and I won't give it back. This year the taste of apples changed, and I did a bad thing. You cut tomatoes, they're soft to the touch. When will you punish me for what I have done? I'm easy to be around, 'cause I associate you with good things. You're all that I need, the top of my lungs, the top of my voice. Water slide.
Okay, last album then. So this is See No Evil from the Glasgow-based multi-instrumentalist singer and rapper Becca Starr. We've actually had this album for a while now. It only came out a couple of weeks actually, so it's the most current album we're covering. But I think it was actually delayed for maybe a month or two. I think it was maybe supposed to come out in like May or June, something like that. But it's just come out on the 20th of August on In Black Records. So, in a similar vein to the likes of Bar's Fury or Slippery Trash Mouth that we've covered in the past, Becca's Scottish accent shines through, and her use of familiar Scottish turns of phrase just brings a smile on my face. I think the Scottish accent seems to be a sort of divisive aspect in hip-hop, and it seems to turn a lot of people off. But I think that Becca Starr's mixture of kind of soul and R&B and hip-hop is maybe a little easier to digest than some of the harsher sounding acts out there. So I'd be interested to see if that gets some people over the kind of Scottish rap thing, which I don't really understand, but it seems to be a thing.
Absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely is.
That puts people off. But was this your first introduction to Becca Starr?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I think I started off by listening to... what was the single? I can't remember.
Maybe I Forgot or Tides, maybe?
I can't remember off the top of my head which single I listened to first. It was the kind of lead single from the album.
Maybe Fear of Death.
Yeah, Fear of Death. For the fourth track on the album, Fear of Death. This is the first kind of Becca song that I listened to, which was described in our kind of promo information as a blend between hip-hop and a pop ballad, which I thought was a pretty fitting description. I absolutely love the juxtaposition between her rap and spoken vocals and those soaring, lush, R&B-esque, almost, I've described it here, it sounds pretty wanky, but transcendental choral sections. I just think they're brilliant, and they really elevate not just this track, but the whole album to another level. And I think you're quite right in that, you know, if there's people out there who aren't sort of big on the whole kind of Scottish hip hop thing, they'll be ingratiated to that part of our act and part of our art, because that's phenomenal. It's really good, and I think this album really showcases our vocal range.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was I Forgot was the first song that I heard way back whenever that was released, and similarly to Fear of Death, that really shows off Becca's singing
prowess.
Yeah, prowess is the word, and she's a really accomplished rapper as well as being just a tremendous singer. So I Forgot in particular, I like. There's a real diverse array of kind of beats and instrumentals on this, and like, because on I Forgot's got these really sort of aching beats, and the drums almost feel like they're recorded live. Like there's a sort of open kind of spacious kind of sound to them that I really like, and yeah, as soon as I heard this song, I was basically hooked and excited to hear the rest of the album. And I'm glad to report that it's a really strong album. I Forgot is the second track, but the intro track needs to be mentioned, which is, I think it's just called intro track or something like that. But it's basically, it's like a spoken word monologue. It's kind of beat poetry kind of style, and it's almost like an open letter, just describing who Becca is and what she's like as a person. And it's just an interesting way to open the album. I really like there's a sort of quite hopeful vibe to the instrumentals. There's this like tinkling piano, a bit of bounce to the bass. It's quite melodramatic in a way, and for whatever reason it reminds me of like the opening scenes of a rom-com, like a montage of someone going about their morning routine, like maybe rushing to work, and like there's a voiceover. You know what I mean? It starts with her kind of going, like, it's almost as if she's been like caught off guard. So in that respect, I can see how it would be a wee bit like a rom-com, because she's like, oh, hello. I'm pretty sure it starts with her saying that, doesn't it? And like, and by no means am I saying that it's shit because it's,
No,
it's
or
like a
twee
rom-com.
or
It's
anything
the exact opposite. I just think it's totally arresting, is what I'm trying to say. It just kind of stops you in your tracks, and then that goes into I Forgot, which is incredible, and then it goes into Tides, which is another really strong track. It's got more of a sort of tribal vibe. There's these sort of tribal kind of pipes. I think there's a little kind of more sort of grime in there, maybe. I'm not up on my grime, but there's a grimy element to it, I would say, to some of the rapping there. And again, it's got some really strong, soulful singing in the chorus, and I like in the second verse where the rapping sort of goes double time, picking up the pace, and it's really quite impressive.
Yeah, for me, it was the lyrics themselves that really caught my attention on Tides. She kind of prophesises these kind of apocalyptical type scenarios, which at first sound a bit kind of fanciful, but if you actually take the time to sit and listen to them, it's exactly what's kind of happening. These kind of billionaires are quite literally kind of leaving the dying planet behind and leaving us in the shit, as it were. So really kind of topical, really clever. I really enjoyed them. Quite enjoyed the kind of tongue-in-cheek lyrics about being caught up in the rat race, that, you know, need that mortgage, need that car, rather than being focused on perhaps the kind of bigger issues that are at play. The lyrics throughout the album are really witty, really clever, and I think if you kind of, as I said, you know what I mean, sit down, take the time with them and really listen to them, I think you get a lot out of it. Some really important messages on the album as well. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but like the 6th track, which, you know, is this kind of spoken word piece, I for one really enjoyed that, really appreciated it. It's kind of, as I said, this kind of spoken word piece is laid over some moody and brooding soundscapes, obviously kind of dealing with like mental health and depression. The lyrics in particular, you know, space cannot be filled when it's made, your life grows around it, but it's always your space, the differences to lives you make, or you made rather. And despite it, you know, dealing with these kind of issues, it ends with a really uplifting message. And then that goes into I'll Carry You Bro, which I feel kind of deals with kind of similar sort of themes. There's kind of guest vocals on there as well, courtesy of Gluco and Kid Robotic, which were class, particularly the second set of male vocals. I really like that. For me, that kind of song kind of talked about the authenticity of your friends and family, and you know, particularly that kind of lyric, which again sung in Becca's kind of R&B type vocals, where she sings, when I face that divide, that's when the people unite, I'll carry you bro, I'll carry you tonight, is a real earworm, and something that I've been singing quite a lot since I've listened to the album.
Yeah, I feel like that song, instrumentally at least, is sort of a palate cleanser after It's Dark Up There, because It's Dark Up There... It's Dark Up There is like, it's got these really dark, eerie violins. It's almost like something out of a horror movie, and it, like you say, it's about, you know, mental health and depression and suicide, and it feels to me like the antithesis of that opening track. It's that same sort of beat poetry style, and where that first track sounds quite light-hearted and hopeful, this sounds really dark, and, you know, it's an uncomfortable subject, so it the music kind of matches that. You know, it's something that doesn't get talked about as much. It's hard to talk about, and it's, that instrumental is quite hard to listen to. But like you said, it ends with a positive message. It's not all dark, but I think I just like the way that the instrumentals matched to the sort of themes there.
I don't know if it's deliberate, and if it is, then it's really pretty fucking cool. But the 5th track, so the track before It's Dark Up There, is called I'm Still Breathing, and I think a strong comparison can be made between It's Still Breathing and a song by the Rubber Bandits, which are obviously like a kind of comedy duo or comedy troupe from Ireland, but they've got this song called Sunny, which talks about suicide, and not in a kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of horrible you're poking fun with, but it combines a kind of tin whistle flute with electronic beats, and I'm Still Breathing does the same sort of thing. So if that's deliberate, or if it's just comparison, it's just a coincidence. Nevertheless, it's cool. Like, it's
yeah, that's got quite a sort of Eastern vibe with those flutes, kind of like a sort of Asian, maybe Japanese kind of vibe, I suppose, to those flutes, and then it's got sort of hand drumming as well, which is pretty cool. And I really like the sort of opening line that after these flutes kind of just thunders in, never planned to be a killer but a thriller, yes. And I like that kind of bravado, like that sort of hip hop swagger bravado, yeah. And there's a cool line, watching all my muckers pushing and shoving, and got an attitude, I'm sure you've got talent, but your vernacular is basic and your demeanour is apparent. It's just like you say, like the lyrics are clever, witty, and it feels a bit like a diss track, but it's also a song about the struggle of being a female musician in a sort of patriarchy of the music industry. So it's perhaps one of my favourite tracks. I really like First Step as well. It's got this kind of, we're talking all about sort of 8-bit kind of stuff, but it opens with this 8-bit kind of video game music, and then it reminds me of like Bobby Womack's The Bravest Man in the Universe, which is in my top 20 albums of all time, and it just in the way it sort of experiments with electronics in more traditional soul music. It's got some great lines in there. Ain't taking no more salt and sass. Does he really love you though? What more's the cunt got to show? And then towards the end it sort of morphs into an almost new metal bruiser with these kind of down and dirty riffs.
yeah, but even before that, man, like you're mentioning the kind of soulful element. I mean, there's times in that song where you could be forgiven for thinking that you're listening to like Arlo Parks. Like it kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, as you said, like the kind of breakdown at the kind of 2-minute mark takes on this really sludgy, grungy feel to it that you just can't help but love. Like I love that. Like, and the effect that she has in her voice is it's cool.
Well, it's to the point that at the end of the song, she basically stops herself and was like, "Fucking hell!" Like it's exactly what you're thinking when you hear it. It gets so heavy, and you're like, "What is going on here?" But it's absolutely brilliant. But I think every song on this album has got a lot to love. There's some good guest spots you mentioned earlier. There was some on "I'll Carry You, Bro." But there's also on the song Half of Me, rapper Wee D comes in. And I think the moments where the two of them sing or rap, but it's no me, it's you, together over these really sort of dramatic violins, I think that is really, really brilliant. And I think the closing song, Speak No Evil, is really good as well, which it's quite gentle, it's quite tender. It's got fantastic lyrics. It's a mixture of sort of singing and sort of absolutely going for it. And it's a great way to end the album. There is a sort of secret track on there as well, which starts about 30 seconds after the Speak No Evil essentially ends, and it kind of brings back some of the strings from earlier. There's a sort of weird unsettling electronic on there, a bit of what was called lounge piano, and sort of Becca's sort of trademark vocals come in as well. Another really good track, and a nice little bonus right at the end there.
Speak No Evil for me. It's definitely one of my favourite songs in the album. Again, you've got that brilliant juxtaposition between that kind of beautiful, tender track with some really good vocals, really good lyrics. And then you've got that juxtaposition of that kind of hidden track, which, I mean, it's quite good to hear a hidden track. It's not a done thing anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard. Yeah, it's weird because Speak No Evil, just you can tell that it's because when you look at it, it's like 10 minutes long. You're like, holy shit! And then like if you look, once it actually stops, there's going to be more. So it's weird. I do remember back in the day that sometimes albums, they didn't have secret tracks. The last track just played silence until storage capacity of the CD finished. So the last track was super long just to fill up the CD, and you're like waiting to hear the hidden track, and it never came. I can't think of an example of an album that did that, but I do remember that being a thing. But yeah, secret tracks have kind of sort of died a death now that you just stream whatever. But it's nice to see. So, what have you given this?
It's an album that really grew on me, man. I think it's incredibly put together, really well produced, a lot of depth and meaning, which I kind of really dug. I think that there's a great deal of variety on the album as well, as you quite rightly said. You really kind of don't know what you're going to get next, because I think like each song's different. And for that reason, I've given it a strong 8, possibly even a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for a 9. As I think it's a really, really good album. I think, like, musically, lyrically, and thematically, it's really ambitious, but at the same time, it's incredibly listenable. And I think this is by far the most impressive, like, album we've listened to in the sort of Scottish hip hop genre, I suppose, if you call that a genre. But it's much more than that. It's not just Scottish hip hop. It's soul and R&B and hip hop and pop as well. It's a really, really solid album. I think one I'm going to be going back to quite a lot, especially tracks like I Forgot and Fear of Death and First Step. Nice. Okay, so that was Speak No Evil by Becca Starr.
My honesty ain't brutal, it's frugal, reserved for those that know me through and through, yo. Yo, I'm dropping truth bombs when all the hope's gone. I'll stand strong and bandage up the broke bones. Ain't held your hand in so long. Wait for a minute, there's a fire in the bitch and it's difficult to get my swag on. Average limits get broken and spoken, worse ideas tend to tag along. What is in my mind? I'll fear all day. I can't describe. Never plan to be a killer, but a thriller, yes. I beg, be kinder to yourself. Because it's dark up there, and that's the facts.
This is not a different test. I've been pushing up my pressure from my toes to my chest.
I repeat that the first step's the hardest. I repeat that the first step's the hardest. But it's no me, it's you. But it's no me, it's you. But it's no me, it's you. You can't teach me yet because you've not learned.
Okay, there we go. That's another episode done and dusted. We'll record the next one in 6 months' time. As always, we'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered, and if you do like any of the bands or artists covered, then make sure you send some love their way. If you want to support our humble show, then make sure you subscribe to the Scratchcast wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave us a nice review. This helps spread the good word. If you want to support us further, then you can buy Grant and myself a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the episode description. If you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, then send your submissions to theheadscratcher@outlook.com or message us directly on Facebook, Instagram at The Head Scratcher, or on Twitter at ScratcherHead. Don't forget, you can also head over to theheadscratcher.com to find pop culture reviews, recommendations, alternative music playlists, interviews, and of course all the previous episodes of the podcast. Our alternative music playlist for June and August is out now. Some of our choice cuts are I'll Fight You by Open Mike Eagle, Oh Come On by Superorganism, Sabretooth by Jamie T, Confession by Katie J. Pearson, A Spoonful of Cinnamon by Travi McCoy, and Fat Mike's on Drugs Again by Less Than Jake.
Yeah, that's a good track, man.
Yeah, there's loads of other cool shit in there, so make sure you check it out. Finally, if you made it this far, all that's left to say is thanks for listening, and as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Ta-ta!
I've just got, right at the end of my notes, I've just got Gent Patron Star written. That's obviously when I was trying to work out my anagrams.
Anagram.
Yeah, so anyway.
It's not finished. It's finished.